Mr. Speaker, attempting to counter every Houthi attack after it has been launched is simply not sustainable. We have already shot down dozens of missiles and drones targeted at civilian vessels and at the Royal Navy. And the Houthis have conducted at least 12 further attacks on shipping since the 11th of January, including just last night, shortly before our strikes were conducted. So we acted to further degrade their ability to mount such attacks. Last week, I gave the House our initial assessment of the first wave of strikes. Since then, we have seen further evidence that they were successful in degrading the Houthis' military capability. Last night, we hit 2 military sites just north of Sana'a, each containing multiple specific targets which the Houthis used to support their attacks on shipping. And Mr. Speaker, I want to be very clear. We are not seeking a confrontation. We urge the Houthis and those who enable them to stop these illegal and unacceptable attacks. But if necessary, the United Kingdom will not hesitate to respond again in self-defence. We cannot stand by and allow these attacks to go unchallenged. Inaction is also a choice. With that in mind, Mr. Speaker, and given the persistent nature of the threat, it was important to update to the House again today. I listened carefully to honourable and right honourable members last week, and so we will give the House a chance for a full debate on our broader approach in the Red Sea tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, we took extensive steps to address this threat to international security before taking military action. We launched Operation Prosperity Guardian in December with over 20 other countries. The international community issued repeated statements on the 1st of December, the 19th of December, the 3rd of January, the 12th of January, condemning the attacks and urging the Houthis to desist. On the 10th of January, the United Nations Security Council passed a resolution demanding that they stop the attacks. And I think it is important to note also that the internationally recognised government of Yemen has also condemned the Houthis for their actions, accusing them of creating a conflict for propaganda, serving only their own selfish ends. Mr. Speaker, as we saw in the House last week, members are rightly keen to hear how this situation could be brought to an end. The answer must include the vital right to self-defence when we're attacked. But that is only one part of our wider response, which I want to say more about today. First, we are increasing our diplomatic engagement because we recognise the deep concerns about and the complexities of the current situation. I spoke to President Biden about these issues last night. The Foreign Secretary will be in the region in the coming days, and he met his Iranian counterpart last week. He made clear that they must cease supplying the Houthis with weapons and intelligence and use their influence to stop Houthi attacks. Second, we must end the illegal flow of arms to the Houthi militia. We have intercepted weapon shipments in the region before, including components of the very missiles used by the Houthis today. This brings home the importance of maritime security in the region, and that includes working closely with our allies and partners to disrupt and deter the supply of weapons and components. Third, we are going to use the most effective means at our disposal to cut off the Houthis' financial resources where they are used to fund these attacks. We are working closely with the United States on this and plan to announce new sanction measures in the coming days. Fourth, we need to keep helping the people of Yemen, who have suffered so terribly as a result of the country's civil war. We will continue to deliver humanitarian aid and support a negotiated peace in that conflict, not just because it's the right thing to do, but also because we need to show the people of Yemen that we have no quarrel with them, as the Yemeni government itself understands. So, Mr. Speaker, this is our strategy, and we will keep all other tools under close review as well. Mr. Speaker, I repeat that there is no link between our actions of self-defence in the Red Sea and the situation in Israel and Gaza. Those who make that link do the Houthis work for them. And I want to be clear that those here at home who glorify the Houthis' attacks are glorifying terrorism, plain and simple. They will be met with a zero-tolerance approach.
Mr. Speaker, these are, of course, the second set of strikes that the UK has participated in, and the stated aim of the first set was to deter and degrade Houthi capability. But we now know that their attacks have continued. So while we do not question the justification for action, it is right that the House hears more about their effectiveness. Labour, of course, recognises that strikes can be used to reduce threat without eliminating it, and we recognise that the military action taken is just one component of a wider diplomatic strategy. But nonetheless, I would ask the Prime Minister to set out his confidence that these strikes will be effective in reducing Houthi capabilities. And while, of course, we understand the clear legal basis for these actions, as the situation has evolved, can the Prime Minister now commit to restating and republishing the government's legal position? Mr. Speaker, alongside the UK and the US, other countries have provided non-operational support for these strikes and maritime protection in the Red Sea. Many more support the United Nations Security Council resolution that utterly condemns the Houthi attacks. So can I ask the Prime Minister what work is being done to hold together that coalition and to, if possible, enlarge that coalition? The action the UK takes must draw on the support of all those who care about international law. And given the special role the UK plays in Yemen, can he set out the concrete steps, in addition to those in his statement, that we are taking to help the people of Yemen, who have suffered terribly as a result of that country's civil war? Because, Mr. Speaker, the international community cannot allow itself to be divided. That is exactly what the Houthi backers in Tehran would love to see. And on that note, can he also update the House on whether his government has given further consideration to the prescription of the IRGC? We do need every tool at our disposal to disrupt IRGC activities, and we must show Iran that it cannot pursue its ends by destabilising the entire region. Because, like the Prime Minister, I totally reject the Houthi claims that attacking ships from around the world is somehow linked to the conflict in Gaza. These attacks do absolutely nothing for the Palestinian people. What is needed in Gaza is a humanitarian truce now, a sustainable ceasefire to stop the killing of innocent civilians, the space for the return of all the hostages, urgent humanitarian relief, and a decisive step towards a two-state solution. Because, Mr. Speaker, Palestinian statehood is the inalienable right of the Palestinian people. It is not in the gift of a neighbour. So does he agree with me that a secure Israel, alongside a viable Palestinian state, is the only path to a just and lasting peace? Because, Mr. Speaker, we must stop those who sow division. We must do what we can to disrupt and deter Houthis. And we must stay united and steadfast in defence of our values, our security and our right to self-defence. Labour will always act in the national interest, and we provide our full support for these necessary and proportionate strikes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Well, can I thank the Leader of the Opposition for his statement, but also his support, and I'm grateful to him for that. And he raises all the right questions about the action today, which I'm happy to answer. I think first he asked about the effectiveness of strikes in deterring and precisely degrading capability. I am pleased to tell him that further evidence after the initial statement I made last week has demonstrated to us that the strikes last week were effective in degrading capability and all the intended targets were destroyed. And I'm also pleased to say that our initial evidence from last night's strikes is also that all intended targets were destroyed, which demonstrates to us, and in working with our allies who have the same view, that the strikes are working to degrade capability, even as he said there may be a difference between reducing and eliminating, but we are confident that what we are doing is working to degrade capability. The targets are specifically selected on the basis of intelligence, military sites which impact the security and safety of seafarers and shipping, and to that end I'm confident that, as I said, the strikes are being carried out in a way that is effective in achieving their aim. I thank him for acknowledging that the strikes sit within a wider strategy in the region to bring about an end to what we are seeing. The Foreign Secretary will be in the region this week, engaging extensively with our partners and allies on all the topics he raised, particularly ensuring that we can continue to make progress on a sustainable peace in Yemen, and no doubt talking to our Saudi partners about that, but also, crucially, broadening the coalition of support for the action that we have taken. As I pointed to in my statement, there have been multiple statements made by a wide coalition of countries from around the world in support of action, and he can rest assured that we are continuing to expand that coalition of support, because the security of navigation and of shipping impacts all countries wherever they might be, not just in the Red Sea. I think all of us have seen the consequences of the war in Ukraine on energy bills across the European continent and beyond. So I think people are very alive to the interconnectedness of the global economy and the importance of protecting freedom of navigation everywhere. With regard to the legal advice, my understanding was that we had, or were imminently about to publish, a summary of the legal advice. I can happily give him that confirmation, but also just confirm to him that the basis for action remains the same as it was last time, but an update to that effect has been published or will shortly be published by the Attorney General. And lastly, I'll just touch on his broader point. He's right to highlight the malign influence of Iran in the region. Obviously, we don't comment on ongoing decisions or processes around prescription of organisations, but he can rest assured that we're alive to the risk and working closely with our allies, in particular the United States and our European allies, to jointly work out the most effective way of countering that influence. As I said, the Foreign Secretary spoke to his counterpart last week, and we will continue to use all measures at our disposal to protect ourselves. We passed the National Security Act here in the UK and have already sanctioned the IRGC in its entirety. But more generally on the specific action that we have taken, I thank him again for his support. We have taken limited, proportionate, and I believe necessary action in self-defence. We will always reserve the right to do that, to protect innocent lives and freedom of navigation. Our desired outcome, of course, is for the Houthis to desist, to de-escalate the situation. What they are doing is unacceptable and illegal, and the onus should be on them to stop it. But we will use all levers at our disposal, including diplomacy and sanctions, to achieve that objective.